This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Today we have a LG washing machine that has a little tear in the door boot that's causing a leak, this tear here. So we're going to be replacing the door boot. This is on kind of the smaller model that they make for the LG washer. This is the boot for that washing machine. Here's the part number. Pretty cheap, probably about $55 for this door boot. Sometimes these door boots get really moldy too. You want to replace them. So I'm using a standard head screwdriver to pry off this spring clamp on the front, and then I'm going to peel off the boot from the front panel. I'll use some pliers to remove these two spring clamps. One is bringing water down in through the boot, and the other one's just a little plug I got to remove. Now I can take this plug assembly and I can push it out of the washing machine because I'm going to reuse it. And I'm going to also use my pliers to press it on this spring clamp to loosen up this tube that goes on the drain part of the boot at the bottom at the 6 o'clock position. So I got that off, and now I'm going to push the boot in toward the spin basket, and this is going to give me a little bit better room to work. So the conventional way to do this procedure is to remove the front panel, but I'm doing kind of the faster, newer approach where I'm using this LG spring tool to come in and remove this spring clamp from the front without doing as much disassembly. So I'm grabbing it and then pulling the whole thing toward me, and the spring will let that clamp come off. Now that I have the spring clamp off, I can actually pull the old boot off. So you got that out of the way. Here's kind of how the spring clamp works. So this hooks over, and then this LG tool, it's kind of expensive, I think they're about $50. It helps you to pull that spring over and hook it. And without it, it's pretty hard to do this procedure. But with the tool, you could probably even do the procedure without taking the front panel off. So I just pulled off the old boot, and I'll grab the new one. Before I do that, I'm going to take the spring clamp that's on this tube, the bottom, I'm going to push it down about ½ an inch down the tube to give me some room to work later. So I take this liquid detergent, and it makes a great lubricant. I'm going to put it in the seal part of the boot, the part that goes against the tub. And that's going to make it a lot easier to push the seal in on the tub. I'm also putting a little bit of lubrication on the holes where the different tubes are going to go in, just so it's easier to put in. And then to put the boot in, I'll start at the 12 o'clock position, and I'll push in real strong to get it to click into the tub. Then I'll work it all the way around, just inch by inch, until I know that the boot is firmly attached to the tub all the way around, and then I'll put the ring back in. So I'm pushing the boot in now at the 12 o'clock position with two hands to really get it to lock in. You'll feel it kind of click into position when the rubber goes over the plastic rim of the tub. And then I'm going to start working off to the left side, just like inch by inch, using my thumbs to push in until I feel that clicking feel all the way around. So then I'll start to go over to the other side, and I'm just going to work from 12 o'clock out toward 9 o'clock, and then from 12 o'clock out toward 3 o'clock, and just gradually go all the way around. Some of these washer door boots go in really easily. On the LG, these come in actually pretty easily. They click right into the tub without much struggle. I'm pushing in the part that goes to the front panel because I want to get that out of the way. It's just kind of messing up my field of view. So I'm going to push it in, and then I'll continue using the thumbs to push in and get that part of the door boot to lock in against the tub. Once it's fully into position, we'll add that spring clamp back on. We do have to use that special LG tool to be able to do that. But the good thing about this procedure is that You do have limited working space, but there's a lot less disassembly. You don't have to take off the top panel, you don't have to take off the control panel, you don't have to take off the front panel, you don't have to take off, in some of these models, the bottom panel. So it's pretty fast, just a little harder because you have less room to work. There definitely is enough though. So I'm pushing this in, and then there's this black part that's going around, and that's concrete that's used as a counterbalance. But there's enough room for me to still push my thumbs in there to get the boot to lock in. And then on the boot, there's a ridge that's designed for the spring clamp to fit into. So I'm just going to really confirm that I got that thing in there as tight as it can go, and then I'll push that extra part in. It's a little awkward, but if you keep pushing with your two hands, you can get the extra part, the part that goes to the front panel, you can kind of get that to stay in out of the way. Some people use a little duct tape too to help keep that from coming back out. So now I think it's in there pretty good. Everything feels solid. I can add the spring clamp. And the way I do that is I'll put the spring clamp in around the ridge, and I'll have the spring part of it where I do the connection. On this model, it's going to be done up at the top at 12 o'clock. A lot of models, it's also done over at the 3 o'clock position, but this one there's no space there because there's a big concrete weight. So I'm going to do it at the 12 o'clock position. So I'm just pushing the spring clamp into that ridge. Just take your time. This part's a little tricky because you've got to get it into that ridge before you put your tool in to compress the spring clamp. This thing helps you to pull the spring over on top of the wire side, and you're going to put your tool, the left side of it, into the hole, and then the right side into the spring, and then pull it over. So we got that locked in, and now we're putting in the drain tube. Here's a link to the LG tool that's used to remove and put in the new washer boot. So I got that bottom tube on. Now I'm going to put the orange plastic piece back into the new boot. I've got to make sure that the opening part of this tube, the bottom, faces in toward the spin basket, because that's where the water is going to shoot into the washing machine. So you got a little bit of lubrication there to make it easier for these to go into the holes. I'm going to push them up in there. And I want to push it in as far as it'll go, all the way up. And again, I've got the part where the water shoots out facing in toward the silver spin basket, not toward the door. So pushing that all the way in as far as it'll go. I'm going to add the little cap to the one on the left. That's that one, and this model is not really used, so they just cap it with a rubber cap, and then I'll put the spring clamp on top of that. If your LG washing machine is ever leaking, it's probably due to a small hole in this door boot, usually near the bottom. So putting that little plug on. Now I'm pushing the other one, the one on the right, up into the tube that brings water into the washing machine. And I'm going to put the spring clamp over that tube to hold it on. First I'm bringing the spring clamp down on this orange tube all the way as low as it'll go. And I'll put the black rubber tube onto the plastic. And then once I have that, I'll use my pliers to compress the spring clamp, and I'll wiggle it up onto the black rubber tube to hold it onto the orange plastic. So in this procedure, there's not a lot of room to work because we didn't remove the front panel. So just be patient. It takes a little bit of time to do this tube assembly. And once you've got that spring clamp back up there, then you're pretty much done with the procedure. We just have to then put the rubber boot attached to the front panel, which is actually pretty fast and easy. The only hard part, I think, is the attachment of the back of the boot to the plastic tub and then putting the spring clamp on that one. That's tricky. The front panel off, it's probably a lot easier for first time you do it, but if you've done a few of these, going through the front is pretty fast. So now we're going to go ahead and put the boot back on, just going inch by inch. This is also the same way the boot goes on to the tub in the back. You're pushing it in inch by inch, starting at the 12 o'clock position and working your way around. The front, though, is a lot easier to do because you have so much room to work. Sometimes when people overload these machines, the boot gets a little rip on the front because the clothing gets stuck and then it leaks from the front. It's one of the main leaking points on the front loading washing machines. So I'm putting some lubrication on the spring clamp that's going to go on the front, and that makes it a lot easier to put on. I'm going to start at the 12 o'clock position, and then I'll work the pressure out toward 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock with my thumbs, and I'll push down and spread that spring, and then get the spring to go over the 6 o'clock position. There we go. And you are done. Close the door and we'll give it a good test. Hopefully that's been helpful to you and you get rid of the leak on your machine. Thanks so much for watching, and please subscribe when you get a chance.